Hello, this is Gerald Jovemas. These videos are meant to understand how we use letters as orientations. And just as an introduction, I will repeat something in a completely different way, how it is possible that letters have a fixed orientation. We recognize them as very basic understandings, as basic distinctions. In the same way as we hear them, you can also visualize them. That's my book about sound in form. There are three levels of understanding. They are all looking into the naming of an object, focusing upon an object, and then describing it, actually what we need for it to describe it. And these letters do that. How this works is actually a quite simple natural distinction between things, like with horizontal, vertical, diagonal. It's the same way, the starting point is like the same way as how we have a reference point in space. We use horizontal, vertical and diagonal and make up the point of origin of focus. And that's the basis of our understanding. That's actually what happens with the first 9 letters of its order of complexity, where we use actually the 3 sorts of regions, 1, 2 or 3 points, 1, 2 or 3 orientations of horizontal, vertical, diagonal. And that's enough actually to have a very quick idea, okay, there is it, into 1, 2 or 3 dimensions. And basically it's looking towards what is in front of you, as you see the head there. The second option is that we no longer just only look what's before us, but we also use our head to the right, to the left. We see, okay, what's more, what do we have if we not just look before us, but if we move our head and we look towards what is further from us, further from what is immediately there. And there we need the timings and so on, 1, 2, 3 directions. We follow directions. That's the second option. Actually, it all comes from the same foundation from where we stand. We don't have to move ourselves. We just have a look now, not just before us, but also to the right, to the left, to the past, to the future. Not just in the now moment. And if you look at all the dynamics, if what we see and what it moves, what is possible is that it even there it will not remain steady, and it is moving in an irregular shape of movement. So we have to follow it up even more, and that becomes more complex in describing it as well. And that will lead us to the next level. Because the first level, actually, when we have them in space, they are only 3 dimensions. They are just where it is. With the delays, actually, we have a time aspect which is about delays. It's not there now, so there is a delay towards the past or the future usually, which have a different calculation, which it's most easily done of like, okay, the 1 dimension or the 2nd dimension or the 3rd dimension is a bit longer, takes a bit longer, and we have delays in these dimensions. If you really add them up, you have 4, 5 and 6 dimensions, which you can describe in that way as well. But in a more simple way how to understand it is just like, okay, there's delay in 1, 2 or 3 the first, the second or the third dimension, and there's a delay there, and then we can figure out when it will happen, when the things will happen, and then we can figure that out. And that's the dynamics can happen there as well, if it's not just straightforward, okay, so that we can really pinpoint it in time, okay, it's straightforward somewhere there into this focus, but there's a dynamic that it's changing also at that point. We need these extra dynamics, and within this field of timings there's an extra dynamics which actually will bring us back to our middle point. The middle point is our focus here, and we try to follow it up into the 3 dimensions of following it up. That's the 3rd dimension. So the dynamics in the 3 dimensions is there It's not just one dimension which is moving, two or three. It's all three are moving all the time, and that only by having a main focus, like we have a starting point from where we can start to follow it up. We can follow up all the movements like we follow up a bird in the sky and so on, and still recognize it as a bird, because we see what is moving until where we can see it, from where to where we can see it, and what we can see within these restricted areas. And that's the dynamic follow-up of the third focus, and we also have letters there. Basically, if you just see it as geometry, it's quite complicated, but in simple terms, it's actually just not more than following up everything which is has a dynamic behavior, but we can still define it with the measurements that are restricted, the restrictions in space and the restrictions in time. And if we have both the restrictions in space and time, we know where it is, when it is, and also then for this next dimension, when it can happen, when it can appear, because it can appear and disappear. It's a definition, like you have it not all the time, but with this, when the circumstances are right, you can see, okay, here are the circumstances, right? They describe circumstances. That's why it's complex if you would describe them with geometry, but it's still possible. And if you would do that just with dimensions, you can have the plus and minus dimensions, which makes it easy. It's just like, okay, it moves up there with a delay, but here we can restrict the delay. We know where the fixed point in space is at any time, at any place. But if you really want to define them, this happens within 7 or 9 dimensions even, to define all these movements, if you really would like to. But you can do that, of course, much more simple. Like you follow up a bird in the sky, you can predict more or less, okay, this is the kind of behavior. If you understand the kind of behavior, you understand actually where you have to pinpoint your attention to and understand it. And so basically, what are the 3 kinds of focuses? The first focus in space is like, yeah, where is it for me then? And then the second focus is, yeah, how much delay in time is there? And then it already focuses towards what is different and towards you. And then the last option is, yeah, how much restriction is there in space and time? And that's also for us, because it's the same for you and me. It's not just from my viewpoint, what I pick out. It's not just your viewpoint, which I don't have or don't have yet, or might be able to reach. No, it's something that might be able to reach for both of us. From my point of view, for your point of view, it's all the same thing. It's this pinpointing activity that is the same for both of us. So it's the 3 kinds of focuses make up all the letters. It's quite complex if you have to, maybe it's quite complex for some people to understand it immediately, but it's actually that's the way how we look at things. That's how we define things, how we can recognize things. They're not just there fixed on the table. They're not just there moving to somewhere else. Sometimes they can move all around and behave erratically and change also at the same time. But you can still define them if you know what is changing and what is being restricted at the same time. Then you know. So what helps actually to understand it a bit better and to know is to visualize it, to know what it is. So the visualization of what is happening in the 3 dimensions in space is most easily presented with a figure, which is me, which looks at the 3 dimensions. And I prefer to split these 3 regions up so that you have a better view on what is the first 3 dimensions, and the extra delays in time, and the extra circumstances in the background. So better is then that I split them up. So I have what is before me, as you had them with the head that is looking before you. You have these 3 dimensions before you with the first couple of letters. Then it is, you look to the right, to the left, you have these dynamics, which have these delays in time. which basically are simplified by saying, okay, I need a bit time for it, so that's the time arrow there, towards what is different. And what is different is actually also the idea of this is the other person, and he has other meanings, he has other conditions. There, it's somewhere else. I give it the time to go towards it. And the background are the restrictions, which basically say, okay, something is happening for us in the background. Let's figure out where between you and me we have a point of reference that we both can understand. And if I would really design them in with arrows, it will be difficult because, okay, it's moving all the time. So I have this point which moves. You have the fixed position in the blue arrows, which moves along with the frame actually, and thanks to this frame you have these restrictions of how much it can move actually, something like that. But okay, let's go to an example, and I will make it more and more difficult in the future with words that are quite abstract and you can't imagine actually a visualization of a form with it. And if I do it right and I have the right educational level to make it understandable, okay, then I can take these difficult words as well. Random is such a difficult word. Why? Because even when I ask you, how does that look like when we put that in a form? I mean, nobody can do that very well. Okay, you have these randomness then as well, like, okay, well, what shall I do? I have no clue what to do. But you can describe what random is, and the description will be the same as the automated description, which I have as a follow-up in my system here. And all the letters can be put there, and actually I didn't do that before, but actually when you put the letters at the right place, you almost can sense what is happening there, how they behave there. They have a certain form in the first 9 letters underneath in space. You have a certain dynamics of moving towards somewhere in the second category, and they have also, they are framing actually the all the movements and restrictions in the movement in the last category. And actually, if you understand the positions well, you will also understand the form of these letters well, because they are quite fitting to the content which is expressed there because of its positions within its dynamic field of expression in space, in time, or in the contemporary conditions of a time-space orientation. Here, this is the basis which I will use, and I will use it as a reference frame, as a reference for understanding random. But first let's define it, and the definition which I will make should be actually the same as the automated system of letters. And I will just use the letters this time, not the directions, not the points, and not too much movement. I will just make it simple, try to make it simple, as simple as possible. What is random actually? Random is about picking out something, but it's picking out something in a way that I cannot decide what I will be the result. So there will be a result which is actually a bit predestined, not from my decision, but from the general conditions. So in a way, from contemporary conditions. So the circumstances will decide, and that's what already will give me a clue that this will not be my pick, but about a pick from circumstance. So when I would pick out things, then the letters that I need for it to pick out something will be below there. It's my pick out. Where I decide what to pick out, it will be picking out a point of reference, a starting point, because all the 9 first letters are about starting points with a centered focus before us in space. But I do not decide it. It's a circumstance that decides. So I cannot use a letter from that position onwards immediately, because the starting point is not me, but the general, actually almost like general circumstances for both of us. So there should be about these circumstances. Circumstances decide. And that's true because the first letter is a letter R. And this letter R we will find there further on. So it's like the conclusion of what is ongoing, what is continuous. There will be a connection made from there. Just to make it more practical, I can also follow up the order of letters, like I have now the R, and then I have to have the A, but the A is more narrow, nearby me. That's the point of reference from that. So then I have to move up all the time. I do the opposite. So I will use my focus of A, where I can have the R a bit sooner. So because it's the same thing, it's ongoing the whole time, but I will have that connection point with this ongoing the whole time, conclude in a concluding way from R towards A. So here's the R, which has then a decisive direction and pointing out and this decision of framing towards my decision, because it goes from R to A, to my pick out. So the circumstance decides towards my everything what I pick out. That's the Ra here, and that's already very understandable from here, and it already expresses almost already what is going on in this word in random already in the first two letters. It's almost deciding the full perspective already of what will come out of it, but with a certain more specified focus. But here it says circumstances that are needed, and that are needed for all of us, for as one. All the circumstances that are prosperous for having a continuation will be decisive for what I will pick out. So far, that's the R, but it will emphasize it even more, that it's not necessary that important, that it will say, okay, it's about the whole continuation of things, and that will make the continuation of things better or so on. No, let's see what the focus will emphasize. But here it's already, most of the word has been said already as a starting point. The A is not just my pick out, but is also the focus of all my perspective as well in space of the pick outs that I'm going to do there. The N is the next letter. It is the letter which actually says, let's see what I can use from space towards any time process. With D, it says, okay, I want to engage it to change something, or I want to change. I see what will happen in time. This is the right position. The O is also at that position of let's see what I can do in a way. Let's see what I can do towards the future from my point of view, in timing and so on. So in the process that will happen from there. And then the M, in the end, will be the material that will come out of it, the extra material. So it's actually quite easy to read, actually. Circumstances decide with R, of my pick out with A, of what I can use in N, how I can follow this up in O, of the extra material that will come out of it as a result, because that's the last letter, and that's actually perfect description of random. As you can see, even with a difficult word, you can still find the idea of how we focus with these letters towards the word, then it actually describes these what it means quite well. That's how the mind can use these words so easily as well, because they are at the right place. It would be, for instance, different if we would call something which is green call red, or when something is round call a square. It will not take long, or we will completely lose our mind. Now, when it's really well fit to the words, it will keep our mind also clear, silently following up easily without even paying much attention. It is just following what's there. With more attention, you will see more, and this method will give you this extra attention to make you realize how the focus is really focusing itself. For some words, it will even tell you what are the consequences when following a word or using a word, and so on. That would also be quite interesting, especially when you see how some words are used deliberately for some political or reasons, for instance, to find something positive or negative. You can pick out certain words and your mind is going into a certain direction. It's sometimes good to know that beforehand, what will happen if we use that word. What are we really naming with a word, and so on. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.